Mira, ahí viene el Fordito de mi tío. ¡Pare!
Then massive Galmudoi. One Tangachi, Adoi. Menyamula itu, menyamula caciri, kalau mau dia food,
Whether Ford La, Ford D, or Ford Cito, it is an international word, and one of the few known the world over. On every continent, in every tongue, and nearly every dialect, Ford has a meaning. To millions of Spanish-speaking Americans, a Ford is affectionately known as El Fordcito, and regardless of the number of cylinders, the car is inevitably called Ocho V, after the first V8s which arrived in the 30s. In Africa, there are chants and folk songs about the mighty Fords which crossed the veldt in 1917. From the Klondike to Ceylon, from Tinsin to Paris, in the Indies and Iceland, in Chicago, east, west, north, and south. Ford tire tracks helped stitch the world together. They say that Henry Ford put the world on wheels and made it smaller. And perhaps he did. But in the doing, he created something equally important. From the instant he looked across the Detroit River to Canada and pondered shipping and building cars beyond the United States, Henry Ford began to build the invisible bridge. Today, that bridge extends around the world. From the mighty Rouge plant in Dearborn, Michigan, it spans 3,000 miles to Dagenham, England, and on to a major sales center in Beirut. It stretches from an assembly plant in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, to Toronto, Canada, and on to Singapore. From Santiago, Chile, to Sao Paulo, to Mexico City. The bridge extends from Copenhagen, Oslo, and Stockholm to Montevideo, and it reaches from Athens to Salzburg, Austria. It touches Alexandria, Zurich, Antwerp, Brussels, and Janvier, France. The bridge embraces the world, and yet it has no physical dimensions. There are no arches and cables to be counted in an ordinary sense. And still 1 million people may cross over it each day. At 7 a.m., Arnold Hupp steps onto the bridge in Ford Verke's sprawling manufacturing plant in Cologne, Germany. There he takes his place with 24,000 workers who build nearly 300,000 motor cars a year. Arnold is a master die maker, responsible for shaping the jig that will guide precise camshaft boring operations on a new Taunus engine. His skill is measured to 1,000th of an inch. Arnold Hupp is a veteran of 24 years in the Cologne plant. He is the product of a system which produces some of the finest technicians in the world. Each year, scores of young apprentices are enrolled in the company's training program. With patience and guidance, these young people are educated as technicians for tomorrow. About 4,000 miles southwest of Cologne, James Audee begins his workday on the bridge. There he joins some 250 fellow workers on the assembly line in southern Rhodesia. With less than a year's experience in the sometimes confusing world of machines, James Audee has quickly adapted to his job. And each day, he takes a giant step in knowledge and understanding. Almost 8,000 miles to a new truck to an alfalfa farmer in Michigan, and drives onto the bridge. Bob was born on a farm near here. He knows farming, and he knows the people. He learned the automobile business from his father, who opened a dealership here over 30 years ago. Bob is manager now, and he's one of 5 salesmen and 31 employees serving the needs of this small North American community. Flavio Gomez de Silva is from Bahia, Brazil. He journeyed south more than 600 miles to find work. He founded in the Perez rubber factory in the outskirts of Sao Paulo. He operates a roller which processes rubber for radiator hose and floor mats. The finished products are sold to Ford Brazil's new manufacturing plant a few miles away. Flavio de Silva and his 117 fellow workers also stand on the bridge. This bridge is a relationship between people of the world. Different as only humans can be, with customs, cultures, and languages strange to each other, they are bound together by the work they perform. They are dependent upon each other and the common enterprise which brings them day by day closer to each other. They stand separately, independently, and yet united on this invisible bridge. Flavio de Silva has many kinsmen. There are over 2 million citizens of more than 100 countries engaged in supplying the raw materials and parts to build Ford products. There are more than 270,000 Arnold Hops and James Audees building and assembling these products in 19 countries. And like Bob Beatty, another 200,000 dealer employees provide transportation in more than 200 countries and territories of the world. More than 2.5 million people building and selling Ford products, standing on a bridge of international commerce stretching around the world. How did it grow? It started with a need for transportation. The world wanted automobiles, and Henry Ford could deliver them economically. At first, a few cars were shipped abroad from the United States. Ford dealers and sales companies began to appear in the capitals of the world. And soon the dream of low-cost mechanical transportation spread to people on every continent. But the need was greater than the young company could supply from a single source. So out of necessity and opportunity came growth. And pioneers from many countries joined hands to sweep away the horse and carriage, the ox cart, and the rickshaw. Gordon McGregor, the manager of a wagon plant in Canada, wanted to build automobiles. And a cornerstone was laid for a Ford assembly plant and a span of the invisible bridge between the USA and Canada. A young Englishman named Perry wrote a letter to Henry Ford and invited him to visit England. And from the invitation, Ford of Britain was born. an assembly plant in an abandoned theater in Sao Paulo, a small factory in Ireland, a dealer in Jamaica, another in India, still another in Iran. And so the bridge grew. In a few short years, Ford was in business around the world. And out of the growth, a network of related companies to serve a world market. A world that is awakening to its potential. Europe, once a checkerboard of national boundaries and age-old suspicions, has become a community of nations working together for mutual benefit. Latin America, with many new industries on the move, holds a bright promise for future combined markets and an increasing share of world trade. In Africa, new nations are taking first steps toward industrial growth and economic freedom. And in a significant way, an international corporation operating through its affiliated companies can become an instrument of this awakening. A worldwide enterprise contributes to progress wherever it goes. So long as it remains competitive, it can create jobs and develop new skills. It can multiply individual efforts and provide a mechanism for rapid development. James Audee was born in a kraal built from mud and wattle. His family lived by growing mealies and sweet potatoes. There are some who would say James Audee was happier then, but James Audee does not agree. The Ford assembly plant in Salisbury offered him a chance to earn a living, to develop a skill, and to stand with pride. The kraals are disappearing from southern Rhodesia, not just because of one small assembly plant, but because industry radiates. To supply the Ford Rhodesian plant, other small factories and shops have sprung up, and still others will follow. Multiply progress in Rhodesia many times, and you begin to see the effect an international corporation can have on other developing countries. By contrast, Western Germany is highly industrialized. Its economy surges to the rhythm of heavy manufacturing. And here, too, the bridge provides a pathway for progress. The Brühl foundry, a few miles outside of Cologne, produces some of the finest castings in Europe. Some of the processes used in this modern metalworks were developed with the assistance of Ford engineers 3,000 miles away in the Rouge foundry. Today, the Brühl foundry employs over 1,000 men and supplies castings not only to Ford's Cologne plant, but to other automobile makers as well. Hands across the sea, extended in friendship, have helped economic growth in Western Germany. The story of the Brühl foundry is not an exception. Rather, it is part of a fundamental equation. An international corporation lives by its ability to exchange methods and ideas between people. The solution to a paint spraying problem in Africa may be applied to a similar problem in Mexico, and perhaps 3 months later accomplish the same thing in Finland. The time-saving suggestion of a mechanic on the assembly line in Toronto can result in increased production in South America or in Germany. This is the invisible bridge at work. Because of its size, Ford can maintain vast facilities dedicated to research, to exploring new directions in science and industry. In California, Ford physicists are unlocking the secrets of space that may one day help to put a man on the moon. In another Ford research laboratory, a plastic heart is being probed by a new kind of medical instrument that may save human lives on every continent. At the Engineering Center in Dearborn, A vehicle without wheels, riding on a thin film of air, revolves endlessly in a circular experiment. This may be the beginning of a new concept of rapid land transportation. These are projects perhaps years away from practicality, but from this kind of advanced research come new ideas. New materials that are helping today to build products around the world. Materials, ideas, and sometimes people cross the bridge every day. Alfred Bass is acquiring a taste for American hot dogs. 2 years ago, he had the same experience with smorgasbord in Scandinavia. In a few months, he will return to his native food in Belgium and his job with Ford International. To the Ford dealers of Michigan, he brings the experience gained from working with dealers throughout Europe. Al Bass is part of a plan that allows Ford dealers to share the experience of others and better serve the transportation needs of their countries. Bill Burkus was never a citizen of Venezuela. Caracas was only a temporary home, for it took only 18 months for him to train the Venezuelan technicians who will be responsible for many of the key operations in the new Ford plant. Bill Burkus is one of a group of technical experts who travel the world troubleshooting production problems and training local engineers and mechanics at new Ford facilities. He is a vanishing American who brings with him experience and knowledge and leaves them behind when his job is done. Unlike Burkus, Ford Motor Company is a citizen of Venezuela, and Switzerland, and Malaya. Ford is a conscientious citizen of every country in which it operates, a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen contributing substantially to the economy and progress of each nation. Each year, Ford Italiana returns more than 6 million lira in taxes to the Italian government. Ford Motor Company of Canada spends more than $140 million a year with supplier companies within the Canadian borders. Students and universities the world over receive more than $1 million each year in assistance from Ford companies. In payroll alone, Ford of Britain moves more than 55 million pounds a year into the economy of the United Kingdom. Translated into simpler terms, follow the pounds in Brian Young's pay envelope. There are more than 2 million Brian Youngs on Ford's invisible bridge. A bridge that transcends language, customs, and differences. A bridge that brings them together. A salesman in Austria sells an automobile, and a power shovel operator in Argentina begins to push back the red clay for a new warehouse. A dealer in New Zealand fills an order for a car, and an Australian assembly worker is paid to help build it. The office girl in England would have difficulty talking to the secretary in Uruguay, and it is doubtful the metal worker in Malaya will ever meet the Ford mechanic in Helsinki. And yet they are all related to each other by a grand design of international business. They are neighbors in a world growing together on an invisible bridge called Ford Motor Company.
I am Henry Ford II. All of us who stand on the invisible bridge share a deep satisfaction. It is the knowledge that together we are more than just a business. We are a giver as well as a receiver. We are a giver of knowledge, of skill, of technology. We are a reservoir of practical cooperation and better understanding among people. We serve the rising aspirations of mankind everywhere for a life that is richer and more secure in material things, but more importantly, for a life lived in dignity, freedom, and decency. This is our pride, and we are not alone. 1,000 other bridges of enterprise span the earth. They bring hope to free men everywhere and to those who would be free.